Hello everybody, my name is Lat Mackey and this is Sequence Break IL, a look at speedrunning, game development, content creation, and everything in between. And for this one, mixing it up just a little bit here, I want to give you all a recommendation. I'm also going to share a clip and a conversation that I had with KingDime, who is a Doom speedrunner. But I recently listened to this wonderful, over 5-hour interview with the legendary game developer, John Carmack. And for those of you who aren't familiar with him or know who he is one of the co-creators of id Software. And that by default at the time makes him one of the co-creators of Wolfenstein 3D, Doom, Doom 2, Quake, all of those early id Software games during the 90s that I know affected my childhood quite significantly and may have affected yours as well. But hearing him talk about programming and coding and developing and starting a company at the same time, the interview is 5 hours long, and honestly, I could have listened to another 5 hours of it. It is just absolutely fascinating, and they touch so many different topics and subjects. They eventually start talking about machine learning, AI, and all these other things, and it's just, I think people who listen to this podcast would definitely be interested to hear him talk. As I was listening to the interview, it started reminding me of that age-old question that now seems to be like ubiquitous within our society, and that is, will it run Doom? You know, like there's Reddit threads posted on it. It seems like every month there's some sort of new piece of hardware that got hacked and can now play Doom on a ridiculously underpowered chip or screen or something of that nature. As you probably know, Doom has been ported to a printer. It's been ported to an Apple Watch. It's been ported onto a TI-84. Remember those old graphing calculators, things like that. And it's just kind of wild that has become the test now. If you can hack a piece of hardware and play Doom on it, that seems to be the test of if you've actually gotten access and are able to code for a certain device. It's pretty cool, pretty awesome. It still cracks me up seeing some of these things that happen. How does this lead over to Doom speedrunning? Well, I wasn't too familiar with speedrunning in the Doom community until I had watched KingDime's streams and also what his performances at GDQ, which is some of the things that we talk about during the conversation. The current state, if you want to run Classic Doom, or if you're at all interested in speedrunning Classic Doom, most folks are running it on what is referred to now as Ultimate Doom. And the community, if you take a look just about the numbers, over 500 players, over 1,200 runs, it's pretty interesting and pretty fascinating. They have a fair amount of different categories and rule sets and things like that, as you can imagine, when you have so many variations on hardware and things like that. And we get into that a little bit because I was kind of like, how do you keep track of all of this stuff in the Doom speedrunning community? How do you make it fair for everyone? What are some of the things that you do? And there are a whole bunch of different, basically it comes around to the source port of the Doom, which is one of the things that Carmack actually talks about during his conversation with Lex. And that is that they had originally designed Doom to be developed and to be worked on and be modded by the community. Like that, creating the WAD file and all those kind of things was actually part of the original intention of Doom. And I found that fascinating that even back then, you get the feeling like these are gamers who are making these games when you hear things like that. Yes, they were a company that was trying to make money and that type of thing, but you actually cared about the community and what you could do with the game and all this kind of stuff. I really appreciate that foresight and kind of think, man, no, I wonder if he would have thought it would still be, people are still modifying Doom, and we're 1993, so we're almost 30 years later at this point. So just if you get a chance, I left the link in the description or in the show notes, and you can take a look at take a look. You can watch it. It's on YouTube, and you can also listen to it. Like I said, it's 5 hours long, so you got to pace it out. It took me about a week to listen to, but totally well worth it. And I hope you enjoyed this conversation with KingDime, as there are so many little things about running Classic Doom that when you're watching it, I wasn't quite aware of. And so hearing some of that insight, and also how King Doom got his start and where he comes from and his background, everything like that. Because I'm always curious too about like how PC speedrunners came to be. Was PC the only thing that you had available to you, or was it what led you down to the PC route? And why is this game still so popular 30 years later? I have my thoughts about it. Like I really feel like the game is still just freaking fun to play. I recently John Romero, as a charity thing, released a new level for Doom, and I got to tell you, I had a ton of fun still playing this game that's 30 years old, and I think that's I guess that's the way I feel about a lot of the retro games that I play. But still, I think that there's something about that core experience that was just so good and so great right from the get-go that still makes it a great experience, still makes it feel relevant nowadays. I recently played through Doom 2016 and Doom Eternal, and if you haven't, I had a ton of fun playing this game. But they've done such a good job of even capturing the spirit of the original Doom in those games. It feels like I'm playing a Doom game, even though it's all modern and 4K and all these fancy textures and all this awesome looking and great soundtrack and just all these cool different things. The spirit of Doom still seems like it lives on and lives in there. And definitely I feel some Quake when I play the modern Dooms as well. Nothing to discount Quake. For some reason, I didn't play Quake as much, but I feel like those series of games have just changed gaming forever kind of thing. So we talk about that as well with KingDime, and I hope this is kind of some interesting insight into the Doom speedrunning community, a community that is still going strong today. So here is a conversation with KingDime. I hope you enjoy. I'm curious what your experience was and how you discovered speedrunning.
Early in the YouTube days, do you remember offhand when YouTube first came out?
Yeah, it's late it's maybe 2007, 2008. I always kind of tie it around to the time of the iPhone, but I'm not 100%. I think it was around that time period, maybe a little bit earlier. I could be totally wrong on that.
Yeah, it's just such a long time.
Oh, Nazium, 2005. There we go. Thank you, Nazium.
2005.
Okay.
15 years ago. Geez.
Yeah, right. Wow.
But back then there was some speedruns that were going up on YouTube. So I've got a few initial memories for it, at least on figuring out what exactly speedrunning was, just as an activity. And so in the Doom world, a couple videos that I had come across were by runners STX Vile and Henning Skogstad, and these were sub 30-minute Nightmare Doom 2 times. Because you got to recall, as a very old community, is that Doom speedrunning was pretty advanced as far as 2005, because they already had just really competitive communities going on. And then the weird one that tripped me up was tool assisted runs, because I didn't distinguish them. Initially it's just, this is the speed run, right? This guy's crazy. I don't know how he's doing all this, just rocket jumping off every wall.
Yeah.
But the Doom 2 task was by Rambo Bones, and it was Doom 2 in 14 minutes, and this one was made in 2006.
Wow. Okay. So that's awesome. There was already this community around happening at that time, even though we didn't have the tools to share these things easily.
Yeah. But you spoke about Mario and Zelda, and I'm no different. There was big Mario runs back then. A famous task by Morimoto.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. That comes up a lot in almost everyone's history.
Yeah. So watch that. Just mind blown by all the tricks. I think he was going behind walls and
it was crazy.
Level 1 or level 2. And let's see, early days. Andrew G.
Oh, yeah, there you go. Absolutely.
The 5 minutes, 4:59, etc.
I always refer to him as a legend because he comes up quite a bit too, because you could see his videos. They were available on the internet. They were out there, He was doing it. I just was remembering this as well. I'm curious, before you had got into the speedruns or even watched any or decided to do some on your own, had you, one of the great things about Doom and Doom 2 and all that was even to this day, there are still many mods you could apply to it. You can really break the game wide open and make it completely unrecognizable if you want to. And I'm curious if you had experimented with any of that beforehand or anything like that before you speedrun.
Yeah, I did do the mods before I speedran, and that ties into StarCraft, because StarCraft 2 was 2010 when that one was released by Blizzard. But I had yeah, I know, it's a decade.
That's crazy.
We had it was a Discord channel, and we're asking each other about the games of the decade for 2010 to 2020. It's just StarCraft was 2010. It's I almost want to include that in there.
It was such a great game, right?
But I had a Terran practice partner, because I played thousands and thousands of multiplayer games in StarCraft before I truly got into speedrunning. Mm-hmm. And my Terran practice partner, who had a online tag of Knight of Knee, mentioned about Doom mods. This Doom mod called Scythe.wad, and .wad just stands for like where's all the data
Yeah. Right.
when you're implementing it. And so I went and downloaded a source port called ZDoom, and then downloaded the WAD, and then I tried that out, and I was hooked like ever since 2011, 2012 in the community.
Oh, nice. And so when do you consider, like, when did you first attempt a speed run of whether it was, and was it classic Doom, or was it the first, which game was it actually?
It was a much worse game.
I'm excited. Which one is this?
My very first speed run was Sonic 4, episode 1.
I was not expecting that at all. Wow. Why'd you choose that one?
Ended up buying it, I think, for the Wii console.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a bunch of leaderboards. I think whenever you would finish up levels, and you could see the leaderboards like directly in front of you, and that just was like motivation for competition. So ended up trying some of the boss levels, doing some boss rushes, and there was a GDQ speedrunner at the very top of the leaderboards back then, Peroxide. Yeah.
No, I'm not familiar. I've almost, Sonic 4 is almost the forgotten Sonic to me quite often, because I didn't have a Wii when it came out. So, it's like, plus, but what a cool way to have a leaderboard built in. So you didn't have to go, there wasn't speedrun.com at the time. So you could, my first person shooter probably would have been Wolfenstein 3D, which was very cool and stuff. But Doom just felt like this completely different animal and like this completely different game. The original one, the shareware aspect of it, the fact that you could play, you could get it very easily. Admittedly, it was only, the first campaign or the first episode, but it was still just felt like this whole new world, and the engine just felt like everything just felt real and raw about it. And when do you tell us, what are the first runs you do of Doom, and how at this point it seems like you've probably spent a lot of time playing Doom.
First runs, oh boy, we're going back to SGDQ 2012. Maybe it was AGDQ 2013, actually, thinking back to it. AGDQ 2013 was the big bang of speedrunning.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But before I was doing the majority of the classic Doom runs at GDQ, Kugelwagen had done runs before that. And he was doing like Doom 1 and Doom 2. But Mike Uyama was standing behind Kugelwagen. And at the end of Kugel's run, when he was winding down and doing his outro and going to the next one, Mike Uyama had asked him, "Are you going to do Final Doom for next time?" And Kugelwagen exclaimed, "Oh, no, that's too hard." Of course, in my mind, if we can learn a Final Doom run, this might be a fantastic submission.
Absolutely.
So I submitted Final Doom, the Plutonia Experiment, for HDQ 2014.
And I can't remember if the video playing right now is Ultimate or Final, but I included it in here because this is actually from later on. This is, what was that? Oh, I can't remember what year it is. Later on, the one you did in 19 or 18, but it is all of the runs that I've watched that you've done over the GDQ over the years. That's what got me to check out your stream, because it's like they're really, it seems like there's a lot of factors that go into it, but one of the definite things that I think is interesting is you have to have a strong understanding of the mechanics and the fundamentals of the game. I think before, maybe, and this might just my opinion, maybe you could describe or talk about it a little bit more, because it seems like you need a strong understanding of how the game works before you can actually break it apart and start doing some of the crazy glitches and all those kind of things, the clips and things like that.
Yeah, because the speed run is not done on I'm Too Young to Die, and this is like more of a community history kind of continuation. But Doom Classic speedruns are done on ultraviolence. So that means you're facing a lot of head-on opposition. So if you're not really comfortable with UV, you got to put in the time so that you can, be on the same playing field as for speedrunning.
Absolutely. And one of the things I've also noticed too is that because you play on ultraviolence, it's where there's a lot of sprites on, there's a lot of things happening on screen. And in any platformer game, quite often especially with classic consoles, we're dealing with trying to reduce lag and things like that. Do some of those strats exist in any of the classic Doom versions? In speedrunning, are you trying to, you're trying not to lag out whatever you're playing?
Lag strats exist on like the console ports. So if you were to go and do speedruns of like GBA Doom, SNES Doom, the one that plays at like 12 FPS.
Yeah.
But like all of those, I think there are like lag reduction strats. But like as far as PC, like the TC, it runs so smoothly.
That's okay. I want to ask you about that. Are there any sort of hardware requirements or I should say limitations when running Final Doom? Any of the Ultimate Doom, any of the older Doom versions, Doom 2?
God, now we're getting into a whole new topic because the community is weird. So emulators in like other communities, I think emulators are looked down like a little bit. I don't know. That's just like my experience.
Sure.
Looking around. There's the runs on official hardware, and then there's emulator runs.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's often people want you to play on emulators and then go to official hardware so that to go on the leaderboards, because sometimes like emulator runs are not accepted.
Yeah,
you probably know this.
First of all, emulators are free, so it's a good way to learn a game. You can most of the time you don't have to purchase all this old crap to learn to run. But yes, typically at the highest levels in the most competitive games, they're wanting you to play on some sort of official hardware to go along with the run. But depending on your community, you might be a-okay with because some of the emulation has gotten really good, actually, interestingly enough, in certain communities and things like that. So yeah. Is there any of that? There's issues in Doom and things like that.
Yeah, because so consoles are a time capsule. So if you buy a console and you're competing against other people, they should all be the same. You might have like a language difference, like a Japanese language, the run is a touch faster. But like if you're playing a PC game, we're not going back to 1993 and we're not playing with 486. You can't really go back to that. So just by having like a modern PC, it's like already different. You're never gonna emulate that.
Right.
But the Doom community doesn't really care as much using like a more modern source port. So source port it's just utilizing the source code for Doom that was released in 1997, and then these got created off that. But in my runs, I'm using Crispy Doom, which is like a vanilla-based source port, but it has a little bit of enhancement. So original resolution is 320 by 200. So Crispy lets you go up to 640 by 400. And sorry, just thinking where I was going off with that. And you can uncap the frame rate.
Oh, cool. Oh, wow. Okay. How high will it go up to?
Pretty much whatever you want.
Oh, wow.
But that's just like that's different from what you'd be doing in 93, because the tick rate is 35, which is essentially 35 FPS. Huh. So in using these newer source ports, like we can go a little bit faster on maps. But Doom really more cares about the final product. They don't want a source port where mechanically things are changing.
Sure.
So an example is in a source port called GZ Doom. When an arch file blasts you upwards and blasts you vertically so that you can essentially do a jump, and you were holding like an input against a wall, in vanilla Doom you would go straight up and you'd come straight down, so you couldn't get onto the platform. In GZ Doom, if you hold that input, you can keep the momentum, so it would blast you up and then you would slide on to the platform. Wow. So like GZ Doom speedrunning is frowned upon, but like Crispy Doom, PR Boom, it's all fun. So if it's close to vanilla, but you have some enhancements and the run is cool, we don't care.
Thanks everyone for listening and watching. If you're enjoying the podcast, please feel free, subscribe, like, leave a comment, all that stuff people say. at the end of a video. It honestly all goes a long way to help the podcast. Thank you so much. If you want to join us on Discord, we chat mostly about food, but occasionally we do talk about the stuff that's in the podcast. The link is in the show notes or in the description. Feel free. Come on by. Join us. If you want to follow on Twitter, Sequence Break PC. Sequence Break PC. I post when I go live. It's kind of not at a set time. So if you want to see the live feed of the podcast, feel free. Follow there. And finally, if you want to email, podcast@sequencebreakpodcast.com. Sequencebreakpodcast.com is also where you can find the backlog of all of the episodes. It's also on YouTube as well. So feel free, join in, have some fun. Thank you so much. I will see ya in the next one.